All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Central Coast Water Board's Irrigated Lands Program Grower Workshop on Total Nitrogen Applied, or TNA, and Irrigation and Nutrient Management Plan, or INMP, record keeping for Agricultural Order 4.0 requirements. I am Jillian Flavin, an environmental scientist with the Irrigated Lands Program. My colleagues Monica Barricarte, a water resources control engineer, and Claire Bjork, an environmental scientist, are also here to assist during the question and answer session. This workshop focuses on records that growers should keep in 2023 so they can submit either a TNA or INMP summary report in 2024. All growers in our region should have received an email or a letter from the Central Coast Water Board in November that stated which of their ranches are required to submit either a TNA or an INMP report in 2024. If you did not receive this email or this letter, but your ranches are in Region 3, please email or call us using the contact information listed here on the slide. So there are various ways for you to provide your questions and your comments today. For this workshop, please be aware that everyone's cameras will be off and everyone will be muted until the question and answer session, and then we will ask you to unmute yourselves when you are called on to ask your questions. For those joining us on Zoom, either by computer or by your phone, you can ask a question by raising your hand or typing it in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring raised hands and chats and will call on you when it's time for you to ask your question or make your comment, and we will ask that you unmute yourself at that time. For those who are joining via phone, you can raise your hand by entering *9 on your phone's keypad. And when it is time for you to ask your question, we will first ask you to unmute yourself by entering *6 on your phone's keypad. Today's workshop will start with a brief introduction of the Central Coast Water Board and the Agricultural Order 4.0. We will then show a video on record-keeping requirements for total nitrogen applied, or TNA. All growers in Region 3 should listen into this section because the information discussed in this video is for growers reporting both TNA and INMP reports. This will be followed by a question and answer section on TNA record-keeping. If you have questions during the video, please raise your hand or type them into the Q&A box and we will answer them during this section. We will then show a video on record-keeping requirements for INMP summary reports. Although this information is specifically for growers required to submit INMP, all growers will eventually be required to submit INMP reports, so all growers are highly encouraged to listen to this section as well. This will be followed by a question and answer section on INMP record-keeping. If you have questions during the video, please raise your hand or type them into the Q&A box and we will answer them during this section. We will then end with a quick survey to get your feedback on this workshop. So the Central Coast Water Board Region 3 develops and enforces water quality objectives and implements plans to protect water quality in our region. The Central Coast region encompasses 8 counties from southern San Mateo to northern Ventura, approximately 7.2 million acres of land, 17,000 miles of surface water, and 4,000 miles of groundwater basins. The Agricultural Order 4.0, also referred to as Ag Order 4.0, was adopted in April 2021. This requires that farmers and/or landowners implement water quality protective management practices and conduct monitoring and reporting to protect groundwater and surface water like lakes and streams. This workshop focuses on how to keep records for TNA and INMP reporting, which is required by Ag Order 4.0. So in addition to this being a requirement, why else should we report TNA or INMP? We understand that growing crops is important and the choices that growers can make greatly improve or worsen water quality. And we understand that the relationship between irrigation and nitrogen are essential to growing crops, and how these components are managed is critical to maintaining and improving water quality. Both irrigation runoff and stormwater runoff are important to monitor because these are the main ways water contaminants leave farmland, either by infiltrating into groundwater or as runoff to surface water. This region gets 86% of its drinking water from groundwater, and our data do show that 31% of domestic wells sampled in our region exceed drinking water standards for nitrate as nitrogen, which can cause health problems for the people who drink it. In surface water, we are also seeing worsening water quality conditions in some areas, as irrigation runoff and stormwater runoff both carry contaminants such as nitrogen and sediment into our surface water bodies like our lakes and streams. And in fact, 29% of streams in our region are impacted by nitrate contaminants. So growers really do have the power to greatly improve or worsen water quality in groundwater and surface water. And water quality can be improved by accounting for nitrogen that's already in the soil, applying only the amount of fertilizer that the crops need, and irrigating efficiently. Reporting helps growers understand how they are contributing to water quality so they can continue doing the things that improve water quality and potentially implement new best management practices. We will now show a video on record keeping for total nitrogen applied, which will be followed by a Q&A session. This video will be on YouTube and is available on the Irrigated Lands Program website along with other tutorials.
Total nitrogen applied TNA record keeping. This video is for all growers enrolled in the Central Coast Water Board's Irrigated Lands Program. In this video, you will learn which records to maintain for total nitrogen applied reporting. This information will be used for both the Total Nitrogen Applied, or TNA report, and the Irrigation and Nutrient Management Plan, or INMP, summary report. Who is required to keep TNA records? All growers in Region 3 must begin keeping TNA records starting January 1st, 2023. When do growers need to begin keeping TNA records to submit a TNA report or INMP summary report? The record-keeping period is January 1st to December 31st of each year. Growers must submit their report by March 1st of the following year. For example, growers who start record keeping in 2023 will need to report those records by March 1st, 2024. What is the TNA report? The TNA report is an annual report on the total amount of nitrogen applied to a ranch from all sources throughout the year, including irrigation water, fertilizer, such as synthetic and organic, and compost and amendments. What is the INMP summary report? The INMP summary report is a report on the total nitrogen applied to and removed from a ranch from all sources throughout the year, plus irrigation management. The first section of the INMP summary report is identical to the TNA report, which is why this video covers TNA records to keep for both reports. Growers who submit an INMP summary report do not also need to submit a separate TNA report. Please watch the INMP summary report record keeping video linked below for information on keeping records for the nitrogen removed and irrigation management sections of the INMP summary report. Who is required to keep records and submit a TNA or INMP summary report? Growers whose ranches are in groundwater phase Area 1 should begin INMP record keeping on January 1st, 2023, or the first day they begin farming activities, so they can submit an INMP summary report in 2024 and annually thereafter. Growers whose ranches are in groundwater phase Area 2 should begin TNA record keeping in 2023 so they can submit TNA reports annually until 2025. Then they should begin additional record keeping for INMP so that they can submit an INMP summary report in 2026 and annually thereafter. Growers whose ranches are in groundwater phase Area 3 should begin TNA record keeping in 2023 so that they can submit TNA reports annually until 2027. Then, they should begin additional record keeping for INMP in 2027 so that they can submit an INMP summary report in 2028 and annually thereafter. Eventually, all growers will be required to submit the INMP summary report. Which groundwater phase area are my ranches in? The groundwater phase area where a ranch is located determines when growers are required to keep records and submit either a TNA or INMP summary report for that ranch. To find each ranch's groundwater phase area, log in to GeoTracker. The groundwater phase area is located on your GeoTracker dashboard next to each ranch name. If you have multiple ranches, please check the groundwater phase area for each individual ranch, as they could be different. Please contact Irrigated Lands program staff if you have questions. What TNA records must be maintained for TNA and INMP reporting? Growers must maintain records on the total amount of nitrogen applied from all sources, including irrigation water, fertilizer, including synthetic and organic, and compost and amendments if they were applied. Growers will also need to take annual measures of the nitrogen content in their soil and maintain detailed records of the crops produced, as well as acres planted and harvested annually, crop by crop. Let's dive in. Irrigation water records. Growers need to keep records of the total volume of irrigation water applied to an entire ranch and the nitrogen concentration in irrigation water. This information will be used to calculate the total nitrogen applied to the ranch from irrigation water. The total volume of irrigation water reported in gallons applied to the ranch from all irrigation sources can be estimated for the TNA report, but must be measured for the INMP summary report. Irrigation water records. Volume. All growers also need to estimate and are encouraged to measure the volume of water applied to each specific crop. This includes, but is not limited to, water used for leaching salts, water that runs off from the field, water used to backflush filters, and water released at the pump due to operational spills. This does not include rainwater. The total volume of irrigation water reported should include all water sources, including water from a well, water delivered by the city, any recycled or reclaimed water projects, or water pumped from surface water bodies such as creeks or streams. Irrigation water records. How to measure volume. To estimate the total volume of irrigation water for TNA reporting, growers could refer to their well pump's electrical usage or measure the volume of water delivered to the field. This can be done by measuring the individual sprinkler or dripper's flow rate in gallons per minute. Multiply that by the total number of sprinklers or drippers in a ranch, block, or irrigation set. This calculated volume must be multiplied by the total number of hours the system is on during the year. To measure the total volume of irrigation water for INMP summary reporting, you should use a flow meter or another volume measuring device. Some water agencies that deliver water to ranches provide the volume of irrigation water delivered or pumped out of the ground on an annual basis. If this applies to you, contact your local water agency for more information. The TNA and INMP summary report instructions on the Irrigated Lands Program website and linked in the video description below provide a list of water agencies. Irrigation water records, nitrogen concentration. Growers submitting a TNA report must obtain a precise nitrogen concentration measurement from their primary irrigation source during the reporting period. Precise means an exact measurement, like 2.5 milligrams per liter or 4 milligrams per liter, and not a range, like 1 to 5 milligrams per liter. Growers submitting an INMP summary report must obtain a precise nitrogen concentration from all irrigation water sources, not just the primary irrigation well. An Excel spreadsheet for calculating the weighted average nitrogen concentration is linked in the video description below. Growers can also contact one of the qualified laboratories listed on the Irrigated Lands Program website, available in the video description, or use a portable measuring device to measure the precise nitrogen concentration. Growers using recycled or reclaimed water should contact their supplier for information about the total nitrogen concentration of their delivered water. If the water supplier does not have the data, or if growers blend their water with another source, growers should take a sample of the water delivered to their ranch and precisely measure the nitrogen concentration. Fertilizer records. Growers will need to maintain records on the nitrogen applied with both organic and synthetic fertilizers to each specific crop during the reporting period, including the amount applied to cover crops throughout the year. For granular fertilizer, keep records on pounds of fertilizer applied and the NPK value, or nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium value. For liquid fertilizer, keep records on the net weight and net volume and the NPK values. Also keep records on crop acres. This will be reported as the average pounds of nitrogen applied per crop acre for each crop produced and harvested during the year. Fertilizer records. Calculate crop acre. To calculate a crop acre, add the total number of acres where a crop was grown and harvested during the reporting period. For example, if a grower has a crop of a head of lettuce on 10 acres, then a crop of broccoli on that same 10 acres, and then a crop of head lettuce also on that same 10 acres, they report 20 acres of head lettuce, 10 plus 10 equals 20, and 10 acres of broccoli, that remaining 10. Fertilizer records for granular fertilizers. Keep track of the nitrogen content on all fertilizer labels so you can convert from pounds of fertilizer to pounds of nitrogen per acre for reporting. To calculate pounds of nitrogen applied, if you use granular synthetic fertilizer, for example, identify the pounds of nitrogen applied by looking at the fertilizer label. Note that if a fertilizer has a value of 10 to 5 to 5 NPK, or nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, this means it contains 10% nitrogen. If you apply 100 pounds of this fertilizer on 10 acres of crops, you applied 10 pounds of nitrogen per 10 crop acres, which is an average of 1 pound of nitrogen per crop acre. Also refer to the Excel tool linked below, which will help growers calculate and report the weighted average of fertilizer applications. Fertilizer records for liquid fertilizers. For liquid fertilizers, keep track of the fertilizer net weight and net volume. Also keep record of the percentage of total nitrogen by noting the NPK value. Refer to the video in the description below for an example on how to calculate the pounds of nitrogen applied from liquid fertilizers, which is located on page 21 of the TNA report instructions. Compost records. Compost and other non-fertilizer amendments are a source of nitrogen and other soil benefits such as improved soil structure, water holding capacity, nutrient retention, biodiversity, and more. Amendments include all non-fertilizer materials containing nitrogen, such as mulch, compost teas, humic acid, or soil enhancers. If you apply compost or other amendments to your ranch, you must maintain records on each specific compost or amendment applied to the ranch during the reporting period, the total pounds of nitrogen applied, and the total acreage that received the compost or other amendment. To report the nitrogen applied in compost, you need to know the amount of nitrogen present in the compost material. The carbon to nitrogen ratio is a ratio of carbon to nitrogen in a substance. The carbon to nitrogen ratio is optional and should be reported if you intend to claim a discount. The compost discount incentivizes growers to implement management practices that improve soil health, and the discount varies based on the carbon to nitrogen ratio of the compost applied. Please contact Irrigated Lands Program staff for additional information on discount. Soil records. Nitrogen present in soil must be reported at least once per annual reporting period for at least one crop. The goal is to measure the content of nitrogen present in the soil that is available for crop uptake. To achieve this, measure the nitrogen in the soil for one crop prior to planting, seeding, or pre-side dressing during a time of the year when nitrogen content is high and will be a source of nitrogen for future crops. To obtain this measurement, take a soil sample for laboratory analysis or use a nitrate quick test or alternative method such as a Cardi nitrate meter or handheld device. Crop records. Growers must maintain a list of all crops grown and crop acreage produced during the reporting year. This includes crops that produce no yield, were disked in, or grown for research purposes only, and not for maximum crop yield. Please keep records of the nitrogen applied to these crops as well. What else needs to be in the TNA report? All growers will need to keep additional records on the total acres under production and fallowed acreage, and any other information used to make nitrogen application decisions. It is important to note that the TNA and INMP summary reports must be reviewed by the operator responsible party. They are required to verify that the information submitted is true and accurate based on their best knowledge. How do I submit a TNA or INMP summary report? Growers who are members of the approved third-party program, Central Coast Water Quality Preservation, Inc., also referred to as Preservation, Inc., can contact them directly to ask about TNA or INMP summary reporting. Growers who are not members of the approved third-party program and who are complying with Ag Order requirements individually must submit their TNA or INMP summary reports on GeoTracker. It is important to note that all growers are required to submit the same information in their TNA or INMP summary reports, regardless of third-party program member status. Where can I find more information on TNA and INMP reports? To find additional information on TNA and INMP record keeping and reporting, visit the Irrigated Lands Program website. Scroll down to the I Am Looking For section and select Total Nitrogen Applied Report / Irrigation and Nutrient Management Summary Report. This page provides you detailed instructions about TNA and INMP record keeping and reporting. It also provides a link to the compliance calendar, which is available in English, Spanish, and Chinese, which provides detailed information on what is required and when. Thank you for working to protect water quality.
Okay, now we are open for questions. Please use the raise hand feature to ask your question and we will call on you one at a time by your name or phone number. You may also type your question into the Q&A box. If you are calling in and you have a question, please press *9 to raise your hand, and when your name or number is called, press *6 to unmute or mute. And now we will take your questions until 10:33. Claire, take it away.
All right, we will start with questions from those who have raised their hands, and then I'll read the questions from the Q&A if we have time. If you have raised your hand, I'll call your name and allow you to unmute so that you can ask your question, and then Monica will provide you with a response. I saw Lowell, your name came up first, and so I've just allowed you to unmute. You can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you guys. If you have a ranch that you terminate before the end of the year, when is the TNA or INP summary report due?
Hi, good morning, Lowell. Monica Barricarte with the Irrigated Lands Program. If your ranch is terminated, you should be submitting TNA and INMP forms within 60 days after the termination.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
All right, next I see from Jaya Krishnan, and I'll allow you to go ahead and unmute yourself.
On a mixed fruit orchard, do we have to specify individual fruit crop?
Could you repeat the question? So sorry, you were breaking up the sound.
For a mixed fruit orchard, do we have to specify individual fruit crop?
Yes, in the total nitrogen apply form, you will have to report line by line, crop by crop. So if you have, I don't know, lemons and avocados and other fruits, you will have to report them separately. Am I answering your question?
Yes, just one more question. So the links that you have mentioned, that weighted average calculator and all that, so they are, where are they available?
They are available in our website and also linked in the total nitrogen apply form. Once you open the form itself, you will see those links in blue. But if you want to see them ahead of time, please contact us. We have our contact information in the chat right now. Send us an email or give us a call and we can send those to you directly.
Thank you very much.
All right, next I'm seeing a hand raised from a call-in listener with the last 3 digits, 321. I'm going to allow you to speak now.
Thank you. My question is, we have a ranch where we produce young plants. We don't use real soil per se. We use substrate. And well, my first question would be, if we produce, hundreds of different genus and thousands of varieties, should we report the nitrogen applied for each specific genus and variety, or can we group everything into ornamentals? How would that work?
So it seems that you have a very specific, unique situation. I think what we can do, maybe talk to you offline and work out how exactly the data will be submitted in your case. It seems that you probably grow in greenhouse or hydroponics. So those are very unique. I would prefer to talk to you one-on-one to decide what's the best way for you to compile those numbers. Maybe contact us through the chat sometime this week and we work with you on that.
Okay, thank you. Then my second question is, for the nitrogen in the soil, would a report from our vendor that tells us our substrate, would that be sufficient for the amount of nitrogen in the soil, or would we need to test it again?
No, that will be sufficient in your case, because I believe you just grab substrate from a pile and you put it in probably pots. So yes, in your case, but again, I would prefer to work with you and talk to you on one-on-one, but in general, the answer in your case will be a yes. You just use the number provided by the manufacturer.
All right, next I'm seeing a question from Leanne. Leanne, I'm gonna allow you to unmute yourself.
Hello, I live and farm in Lake County, and I'm not aware of having received the letter in November. So I'm not aware of which area or phase area I'm in, and so what my requirements are. How do I find that out?
So yeah, please, again, we have our contact information in the chat. We will need to find you in our database and determine in which phase area is your ranch located.
Okay. So you want me to put all that information in the chat?
Or you can send us an email at agnoi@waterboards.ca.gov.
Okay.
Or call us at 805-549-3148. So we need to look at our database to locate you and determine the groundwater phase area of your ranch.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that too, if you're able to log into GeoTracker, your groundwater phase area should be located on that GeoTracker dashboard next to your ranch name. So if you do have access to GeoTracker, take a look there, and then if not, please give us a call or an email.
All right, next I see a question from CA Lily with Coke Farm.
Hi, thank you for your guys' time. My question is regarding having multiple leases on one ranch. As the landowner, how do you, who obtains responsibility? If these leases are renting for over 1 year, how do we ensure that they submit their reports? Can we log into their GeoTracker? Is there like a shared login? How do you suggest someone manages multiple leases on one ranch?
So as the landowner, you are responsible as well as the operator to comply with all these requirements and submittals of these reports. And I understand the complexity you're describing. In the case of an operator that is producing in your land for less than 1 year, you as the landowner should enroll that ranch, and you can create your own GeoTracker account and enroll all those ranches under your name, and you will have full control and access to the information and all the forms you need to submit on an year by year. If they are growing for more than a year, they could enroll those ranches under their names, and they will have access to their accounts on their own. So it's not such a thing as a shared login credentials. So it's a conversation that you should have with them to decide what's the best way for you to proceed. So they could enroll on their own because they're producing for more than a year, but you as a landowner need to have a close communications to ensure they report all this information.
Okay, so as a landowner, it's our responsibility to understand the fertilizer they're applying, the compost they're applying, and measuring the water they're using to irrigate their lands.
Well, yeah, if you ask them to enroll and report this information on their own, you just need to ensure that the data is submitted to us. Maybe you don't need to know exactly what the numbers are, but as long as it's reported by March 1st of every year. But if you are the one who enrolled the ranches, then you will need to gather those numbers and compile them together and send them to us in the TNA or the INMP forms. So it's different ways to do it, but at the end of the day, you're responsible to ensure the data is submitted to us.
Okay. And what's your enforcement tactic for these regulations? Will you have officers enforcing compliance? What will that look like?
Well, the compliance, we look at it every year, whether or not the data is submitted, and we have a progressive enforcement approach. First, we begin with reminders, then we might send notice of violation letters and go on. So we don't start with a fine, but eventually we need to make sure that data is submitted to us once we start with the enforcement process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time for Q&A after the TNA video. We will have another TNA or another Q&A session after the next video. Please contact us by email or phone as listed earlier in the resources slide and again in the chat. We will be showing that information again at the end of this presentation, and we're more than happy to speak with you and answer any questions you may have. I see quite a few in the chat and still some hands raised, so please reach out. We'll work with you directly to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Monica. Thank you for everyone's questions. Now we are going to show a video on record keeping for irrigation and nutrient management plan summary reporting, which will be followed by another Q&A section. This video will also be on YouTube and available on the Irrigated Lands Program website, along with our other tutorials.
Total nitrogen removed and irrigation management record keeping. Instructions for INMP summary reports. This video is for growers enrolled in the Central Coast Water Board's Irrigated Lands Program who are required to submit an Irrigation and Nutrient Management Plan, or INMP summary report. In this video, you will learn which records to maintain for the nitrogen removed and irrigation management sections of the INMP summary report. What is an INMP summary report? An INMP summary report is a report on all sources of total nitrogen applied to a ranch and total nitrogen removed from a ranch throughout the calendar year. It also includes information on irrigation management. The INMP summary report must include total nitrogen applied data. Please watch the Total Nitrogen Applied record-keeping video for record-keeping details on total nitrogen applied. The rest of this video will focus on total nitrogen removed and irrigation management record-keeping required for INMP summary reporting. When do growers need to begin INMP record-keeping and submit an INMP summary report? Growers must keep INMP records from January 1st to December 31st of each year so they can submit an INMP summary report on March 1st of the following year. Who is required to keep INMP records and submit an INMP summary report? Eventually, all ranches will be required to submit the INMP summary report. Growers whose ranches are in groundwater phase 1 areas should begin keeping INMP records on January 1st, 2023, or the first day they begin farming activities, so they can submit their first INMP summary report by March 1st, 2024, and then annually thereafter. Growers whose ranches are in groundwater Phase 2 areas should begin keeping INMP records in 2025 so they can submit their first INMP summary report by 2026 and then annually thereafter. Growers whose ranches are in groundwater Phase 3 areas should begin keeping INMP records in 2027 so they can submit their first INMP summary report by 2028 and then annually thereafter. Please keep in mind, growers whose ranches are in groundwater phase areas 2 and 3 must submit total nitrogen applied reports prior to INMP reporting. Please see the TNA record keeping video for more information. Which records are required for the total nitrogen removed and irrigation management sections of the INMP summary report? Growers are required to keep records on the amount of nitrogen removed from the field through the harvest of crop material for each specific crop, in pounds per crop acre. A grower and/or a consultant must weigh the freshly harvested crop material or use other methods to get the average weight of crop material removed in pounds per crop acre. Growers can consult an irrigation specialist or certified crop advisor to decide how to measure and report the crop harvested. A link to a list of certified crop advisors is provided below. The weight in pounds of the crop material tossed out, or the culls, at a packing facility also need to be accounted for. For crops packed in the field and removed as boxes, growers must develop and implement a method to calculate an average weight of the crop material being removed in the boxes or packing units. Growers must also determine their crop nitrogen removal conversion coefficient for each specific crop. To get this number, use either the crop-specific nitrogen removal conversion coefficient values found in the Agricultural Order 4.0 Monitoring and Reporting Program, or MRP, on page 36 in Table MRP-4, or develop your own crop nitrogen removal conversion coefficient values by following the standard protocols document in the Irrigated Lands Program website and linked in the video description below. The INMP report also provides a list in a drop-down menu that contains the crop conversion coefficients available for selection. Lastly, growers must keep records on the average irrigation crop evapotranspiration for the entire time the crop is grown. This is used to predict how much water a plant uses and evaporates, also known as evapotranspiration. To determine crop evapotranspiration, growers can find the reference evapotranspiration from the nearby CIMMYS weather stations and multiply that by their crop's irrigation coefficients. A list of coefficients is available on the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations webpage linked below. Consult an irrigation specialist or certified crop advisor to help you determine your crop's evapotranspiration values in inches. Growers can also use the UC Agriculture and Natural Resources Crop Manage website to help them determine their crop's evapotranspiration values. Which records are optional for the total nitrogen removed sections of the INMP summary report? Optional but encouraged methods that growers can implement to remove nitrogen from the field include sequestration, or RSEC, in woody materials of permanent or semi-permanent crops like fruit trees or raspberry canes, scavenging materials, or R-scavenge, like cover crops, high carbon amendments, or high carbon woody materials, treatment technologies, or R-treat, like bioreactors or wetlands, and other removal methods that haven't been developed yet, or are other. Sequestration, RSEC. Keep records on the total amount of nitrogen removed from the ranch through sequestration in woody materials of permanent or semi-permanent crops, referred to as RSEC, like fruit trees or raspberry canes. The nitrogen is sequestered in the trunk and branches of these crops because it is retained for the life of the crop. The INMP summary report will contain a list of sequestration values for specific crops, but for all other crops not listed, contact a county crop advisor or consultant to determine crop sequestration values. Scavenging, R-scavenge. Nitrogen scavenging, or R-scavenge, is the nitrogen captured by cover crops that would otherwise be lost by leaching into groundwater. Cover crops can scavenge nitrogen from deep layers of soil and bring it back to the surface layers to be reused by crops. This nitrogen is also retained by the organic matter in the soil. Compost, cover crops, high carbon amendments, and high carbon woody mulch all have the potential to increase soil organic matter and therefore increase soil water retention, which reduces nitrogen leaching. Growers may claim a nitrogen scavenging credit one time per year for each ranch acre by utilizing any of the 4 R-scavenge credit options, which we will now describe in more detail. Option 1, cover crops. To claim a maximum credit of 30 pounds per acre per year for using cover crops, growers should keep records of dated photos of management practices, location of implemented practices, total physical acres where material was applied, dates of seeding, the estimated cover crop biomass and method to estimate, the type of cover crop seed, and documentation to confirm that cover crops were grown for a minimum of 3 months during the wet and rainy season to prevent nitrogen leaching, have a minimum estimated biomass of 4,500 pounds of oven dry matter per acre, or in other words, the weight of the dry matter without any moisture or water content, and they do not contain nitrogen-fixing plants. Option 2, cover crop calculated credit. Growers may receive a higher calculated credit for certain approved cover crops by following the cover crop nitrogen scavenging credit standard protocols to determine the nitrogen concentration in the crop material. Please see the cover crop nitrogen scavenging credit standard protocols on the Irrigated Lands Program website and linked below for more information. To claim a calculated credit for using cover crops, growers must keep the same records listed for Option 1 cover crops, but also verify that the cover crop has a nitrogen to carbon ratio that is greater than or equal to 20:1. Please note vegetative food materials or crop residues left on the field are not considered cover crops and the credit may not be applied. Option 3. High carbon amendments. To claim a maximum credit of 30 pounds per acre per year for using high carbon amendments like almond shells or glycerol, growers should keep records of dated photos of management practices, location of implemented practices, total physical acres where material was applied, material and material size, material application rate per acre, and testing or documentation to confirm the material is incorporated into the first foot of soil, finely ground to less than 1/4 inch in diameter, retained for a minimum of 3 months during the wet and rainy season, has a carbon to nitrogen ratio that is greater than 30:1, and has a minimum application rate of 10,000 pounds per acre. If glycerol is used as a high carbon amendment, it must have a minimum application rate of 5,000 pounds per acre. Option 4, high carbon woody mulch materials. To claim a maximum credit of 30 pounds per acre per year for using high carbon woody mulch, growers should keep records on dated photos of management practices, location of implemented practices, total physical acres where material was applied, type of high carbon woody mulch material, and testing and or documentation to confirm that the woody mulch material is at least 6 months of age, the material's carbon to nitrogen ratio is greater than 30:1, the woody mulch was applied at a minimum of 2-inch thickness of particles to achieve a minimum 70% ground cover, or at a minimum of 3,000 pounds per acre woody mulch application, and that the cover crop mulching practices follow recommendations outlined in the NRCS Conservation Practice Standard for Mulching, Code 484. A link to this code is available in the description below. Please keep in mind that if a grower applies cover crops, high carbon amendments, and woody mulch on every acre of their farm, the ranch may only receive a maximum scavenging credit of 30 pounds per ranch acre per year. Treatment systems or other methods, R-treat or R-other. Growers with treatment systems on their ranches and growers participating in collective treatment programs or systems, such as wetlands or denitrifying bioreactors, should monitor the total nitrogen removed from these systems. To claim a credit for these types of systems, growers should keep records on dated photos of management practices, location of implemented practices, the system description, for example, is it a wetland, bioreactor, new technology, etc., the area that occupies the treatment system or technology, the number of acres feeding water to the treatment system or technology, and the seasons and days per month that the system is operating. Growers will also need to measure and keep records on the pounds of nitrogen that are removed by the treatment or other technology. To determine nitrogen removed, monitor the inflow and outflow nitrogen concentration and output volume of the treatment system. Growers who remove nitrogen from their ranch through innovative and new technologies that are not yet developed should keep similar records to those mentioned. INMP Record-Keeping Summary. INMP records required for nitrogen removed and irrigation management reporting include the amount of nitrogen removed from the field through the harvest of crop material for each specific crop in pounds per crop acre. Crop nitrogen removal conversion coefficient for each specific crop, and the irrigation crop evapotranspiration for each crop that is grown. Growers can keep optional records for sequestration or RSEC, scavenging materials, RScavenge, treatment technologies, R-treat, and other removal methods that haven't been developed yet, R-other. Why is INMP summary reporting required? The nitrogen that leaves the ranch is called nitrogen discharge. The information reported in the INMP summary report will be used to calculate the annual amount of nitrogen discharged from each ranch. In general, nitrogen discharge is the difference between the nitrogen applied minus the nitrogen removed. To find additional information on INMP reporting, visit the Irrigated Lands Program website. Scroll down to the I Am Looking For section and select Total Nitrogen Applied Report, Irrigation and Nutrient Management Summary Report. This page provides you detailed instructions about INMP reporting. It also provides a link to the compliance calendar available in English, Spanish, and Chinese, which provides detailed information on what is required and when. Thank you for working to protect water quality.
Okay, now we are open for questions. Please use the raise hand feature to ask your question, and we will call on you one at a time by your name or your phone number. You may also type your question into the Q&A box. And if you are calling in and you have a question, please press *9 to raise your hand. And when your name or number is called, press *6 to unmute. And now we will take your questions ending at 11.
All right, I see a couple raised hands, so we'll start there. Starting with Pak Sun Grow. I'm going to allow you to speak now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, my question, we're at a greenhouse here in Nipomo of indoor tropical plants, and everything's potted up. How will we report this to you guys when we have so many different varieties of plants and sizes?
So in your situation, like I was explaining earlier, it's very unique. So I understand the complexity what you're describing, so we can maybe find a way for you to report in the TNA form or the INMP form as we have it, but I just want you to be aware there's a few other ways for you to do this. We have a few what we call exemptions or alternative monitoring option, but I would like to discuss that with you more like on this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Because this puts a big burden. We're a company of 6 employees, so we're very tiny. It just,
Right.
I
So
don't know.
yeah,
We'll see.
I wanted to be aware of what the other option we have. So let's make sure you send me an email and we talk about this on the phone.
What is the best email I can send you this info? Is it the preservation email or?
AgNOI at waterboards.ca.gov.
Okay. I think I have it right. Well, thank you, Monica, for answering my question. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks.
Yes.
Bye.
See a question from Stephen. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak when you're ready. Stephen, if you don't have a question, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next person. Looks like Dale, I'm going to allow you to speak when you're ready.
Hey, you got me now?
There you are.
Hey, I got one question. I grow hay along with avocados on my ranch. So when I remove the hay, is that considered nitrogen removed?
So yeah, the hay is a crop, right?
Yes, it is a crop. I do grow it commercially. Yes, I grow hay for cattle and horses.
Yes, so you will need to determine the plant material removed and the nitrogen concentration in the hay and report that in the INMP form.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you very much.
All right, next I'm seeing a question from Emma. Emma G, I'm going to allow you to speak.
Hi, I have a question relating to the third party membership and how that kind of changes your route of reporting. How or where can we find if we are enrolled in this third party option?
So Emma, we already included the third party contact information in our chat. And I can tell you what the phone number is. The best would be for you to contact them directly.
Okay, thank you so much.
You have the phone number, you can see it in the chat, right?
Yes, I can see that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
And next I'm seeing a question from Lowell. I'm going to allow you to speak when you're ready.
Hi, guys. There was a provision in AgWare 4.0 that if your A-R is already less than 50 pounds per acre, you don't need to report. Did that ever really get adopted? And if it did, how do we let you guys know that our A-R is less than 50?
So hi, Lowell. So those provisions, like you call, we have a few similar to what you're describing. We call them exemptions. And we are developing guidance documents for growers to understand what those exemptions are about and how can they submit a technical report to be basically receive an approved exemption. So those documents are in the making. We will provide them to the growers in a few months. But yeah, those exemptions are still in the order and they are available for growers to consider.
Okay, I've got a number of grape growers and they probably comply with that already.
Okay, we will provide that information to you, what is needed to be in the technical report.
Okay.
All right, and seeing no more raised hands, I'm going to move over to the chat and I'll read aloud some of the questions there. The first I see is to measure N concentrations. Do I need to use a third party that is registered, or can I send a sample to a university analytical lab? Can I use a nitrate pen? I ask because of cost and data reliability.
So this question seems to be related to nitrogen concentration in irrigation water. So basically for the TNA reporting, you need to measure and obtain a precise number from the primary irrigation source. That means taking a sample to a laboratory, and it could be a university analytical laboratory, or use a meter that can provide you an exact number. So in that regard, you could use an university analytical lab. And as far as a nitrate pen, I'm assuming that you will use that method to estimate the nitrogen in the other sources of water. Again, if the nitrate pen is used for the primary irrigation source for the TNA, you really need a precise number. So I'm not sure a nitrate pen will give you a precise number or an estimation. So for the TNA, you really need a precise number from the primary irrigation water. And for the INMP, you need a precise number from all and each one of your irrigation water sources.
Thank you, Monica. The next question is, if ag work at my farm is done for research and no harvests are conducted, how should I proceed? And then there's a question, should I harvest and ship the plant material to Nevada?
So in this case, I would like you to probably contact us directly via email or phone. It's a few questions I need to follow up with you to determine, first of all, whether or not you need to be enrolled or this ranch needs to be enrolled in the program. And second, how we will go about the nitrogen harvested or nitrogen removed from this ranch when you, like I understand, you don't harvest the crops, but the material is removed from the ranch. We need to discuss how that information will be monitored for reporting. So probably the best will be to contact us directly via email or phone.
Thank you. And the next question is, can growers with phase 1 ranches pull samples for non-primary irrigation wells in 2023 themselves and submit them to any laboratory in order to have a precise N analysis for INMP?
So yeah, so again, for the nitrogen in irrigation water, you need a precise result from each water source. So a laboratory analysis for, let's say, a secondary irrigation well will be acceptable because it's a precise result. So the answer to your question will be yes.
Thank you. Then the next question is, does the TNA include foliar feed? That is something applied to the leaves of the plant, not directly to the soil?
Yes, it's a nitrogen source, foliar fertilizer that, yes, should be included in the reporting.
All right, and the next question, how often do we need to measure N concentration in irrigation water?
So again, at least once a year to provide a precise result from the primary irrigation source for TNA. And in the case of INMP, if you could take more samples to basically calculate the weighted average from all the irrigation sources, the idea is to provide the highest or the most accurate number that you can measure. That would be ideal for the INMP, but at least one sample per year.
We are out of time for the Q&A, and so if we did not get to your question, again, please contact us by email or phone as listed in the chat, and we'll prioritize getting a response back to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Thank you, Claire and Monica. Here on the screen is a list of resources and tools that were mentioned in the videos, including our contact information and the contact information of Preservation, Inc. These tools and the videos and this presentation will be available on the Irrigated Lands Program website.